One. Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It is your Caped Crusader, Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our new friend, Christopher Rhodes. We're here to break down 10, issue number 1, and everything in between. But before we get to PeaceKeeper, let's break down who you are, Chris, and how you got into comics.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dr. Christopher Rhodes, as you said, I got into comics when I was about, 10 or 11 years old. I was a kid. I watched the X-Men 1990s cartoon show on Fox, and that got me into those characters. And then I remember now very distinctly, Pizza Hut was running a promotion of free X-Men comics they had made especially for Pizza Hut when you bought a personal pan pizza.
Oh,
and so I went and got that. And it was a 4-issue series, and so I had to collect all 4 of them.
And you got the pizza, right?
Exactly. Got some good pizza out of it too.
Yeah. Dude, I remember
that was the first time as a comic book reader and a collector.
I was gonna say Pizza Hut used to do that. What was it? The Book It program, where
yes,
I loved it, dude, and they're still doing it now. I get my kids enrolled in it, where you would read a book and they'd give you a pizza for it. I think that is outstanding. Maybe not the best solution to the healthcare of our children, but it's getting them reading. So Pizza Hut comics. So what was the next step for you though?
Yeah, so I went from the Pizza Hut comics to, they put out, I think it was called X-Men Adventures, which is like adaptations of the show, like a 1-to-1 episode issue that. And so I read those, and then I picked up a random edition of the actual, like, in-continuity X-Men. It was something completely convoluted. Like, it was Psylocke and Spiral and the Hand and all these characters. I had no idea what it was, but I was hooked. And then I kept reading X-Men and Marvel and just, like, open up the whole, like, superhero gamut. And, next 30 years, I've been a fan.
That cartoon was like one of my favorites too. Saturday morning, nice bowl of cereal, watching the X-Men animated series. Man, I could not imagine how awesome those comics were too. Even though they were probably, with them being like direct adaptations, I don't know the quality of them, but they would still be amazing because that show was just fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the show was just amazing. Yeah, the comics, they were just different enough that you could read them and you get something new at it. They would tweak the stories a little bit. And they actually had like decent writing and good art. Like, I don't remember the creators, but, probably some people who were up and coming at the time who probably went on to do some like bigger jobs and some bigger books. So
you dropped doctor at the beginning of this. I love that. You're like, hold up. Come correct. How'd you end up becoming a doctor? Like, we started with X-Men comics. Where did we take this leap to becoming one?
Yeah, so I guess the one interesting thing about my life. I grew up, I'm comic book loving, nerd and all this other kind of stuff. It's pretty good at school, so I went off to college. I went to Harvard. I got my undergrad degree. I studied political science, government. Went back. I love school, so I was like, let me do this for another 10 years. Got a couple more degrees and all that kind of stuff. And then went into teaching. So teaching at some colleges, doing all this other kind of stuff, and all the time, being this big fan of comics. And then when The Dark Knight came out and the MCU and all that other kind of stuff, just living that dream.
That's so awesome. So how did you end up, years of schooling, years of teaching, how did that get you back into creating comics though? Because you never put that love down, that love never escaped you. How did you end up, actually creating your very first one?
Yeah, so, like every fan, in my head, I had all these stories of, this would be my Superman story, my Spider-Man story or whatnot. But never really, did anything with it. And I became a writer on the side, for different news publications and that kind of stuff. So nonfiction kind of things. But it really was in 2020 when we were all sitting at home. I had some spare time like the rest of the world. And it was like, wait a minute, I love this stuff. What if I actually tried to write something? And that's when I started to get the idea for this new comic, which became 10. And once I got that kind of initial idea, I was like, wait a minute, this could actually be something. And I started, brainstorming and jotting down stuff and notes and having little glimpses of characters. And after a while, I was like, you know what? Let me actually go for this. Let me actually make a comic for real and build this world, and see where it goes. And the more and more I got into it, it was just like I got excited about the story. It was like, okay, this is the kind of thing that I would want to read. And throwing in like all the politics and all the kind of stuff that I study in the real world, but with superheroes. Like, international relations would be so much, more interesting if you had people flying around and punching each other, representing countries, instead of conference rooms and all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, let's do it.
And it's, I think it is a really interesting concept. I had the opportunity to read it. Thank you for providing me that PDF. And holy crap, it blew me away. I think there are a lot of different layers to it. You could really, we were talking backstage and you were telling me your experiences, what you studied and what you learned. I'm like, I could really see that within this comic, just because like the different, political stances basically that are brought up, the different like jurisdictions that are presented. I'm not trying to spoil anything, so I'm kind of just like dancing around here, but man, like holy crap, they're like it seems like you really did a good job of like, what is it, the bureaucratic tape or whatever, like where you can't like do certain things. Like you did an awesome job not only representing that, but like the kind of the corruption within that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where it's like, we look at the world and just turn the news on any given day, and there's so much crazy stuff going on in America and around the world and everything. And I really just wanted to be like, what would happen if we took this world and we threw in a bunch of superpowered people, a bunch of superheroes? Like, could they fix all this stuff, or would he just become part of that system and get wrapped up in all this stuff? And if we had people with these powers, that you'd have politicians and you'd have these interests that would want to use them to accomplish their own stuff and their own goals. And how would that look? And that was really what I wanted to go in there. And I'm really glad that you said that it works on these different levels, because I wanted to touch on all those different things, but I also wanted it to be a fun story where if you just like people fighting and flying around and shooting lasers from their hands and all this kind of stuff, all that's throughout the book. There's a traditional superhero story, but layered on top of this idea of what would superheroes look like in our world. And like a kind of The Boys or Injustice or any of those kind of things that are out now that get a little bit into that. And I want to really take that and run with it.
I was gonna say I really picked up like The Boys vibe, like without like the over excessive like violence and gore, like kind of like the underlining like backstabbing, I guess, like the underlining like the underlining dirtiness of like Vaughn Industries, for example, like the public face it has, but behind it, it's really corrupt and it's really dirty. And like I'm getting these vibes from a lot of these politicians like within this book. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's really what I was going for. That I wanted to get that. I want to be. So I'm not quite as cynical as Garth Ennis or the folks who did the adaptation and whatnot. But that is stuff that is there. You have shady people in the real world. You'd have shady people in this world, manipulating things and whatnot. But I want to be, have that, but also be a little bit more hopeful. A little bit like, we do have actual good guys who hopefully, get some wins, get some victories. To some extent, I'm not gonna spoil the ending of it, obviously, but I think there's a little bit something in there, whether you're more on the hopeful side, whether you're more on the cynical side. There's a lot of stuff there.
And it's really you put a really unique spin on it too. Can you give us a little bit about like the concept of like what it's about? How it begins, maybe a little bit about the protagonist. Whatever you don't want to spoil, that's fine. I just, having read it, I'm filled with excitement. I want to talk about it, but I want you to kind of lead the way so I don't spoil anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'm really happy. And, I think, the first couple pages really set up the world that we're building here. And so the basic premise is that it's our real world, but one day these visitors show up from another world, aliens or whatever you want to call them. And, this typical flying saucer, little gray man kind of thing. But they show up publicly. They show up and they announce themselves to the world. And they announce to us as humans, hey, we've been watching you for a while. We've been following you all. You're at this really unique point in your history. And we're here essentially to offer you a gift. You know, hey, you as humanity, choose 10 people. Pick 10 people, give them to us. We're gonna give them these amazing powers and send them back to you, and let them change the world. And so obviously, we do that. It's too good of an offer to take up. And so now you have these 10 people chosen from around the world who are now superpowered, who are like the Superman, who have all these powers. They're flying, they're super strong, they're blasting energy, they're doing all this kind of stuff. And the book really picks up about 5 years after that happened. So you're now in a world that's been shaped for the last 5 years by having these superpowered people going around, and you're starting just to get glimpses of what it is. I envision the way I see 10 going is that, each of the first issues will introduce us essentially to another one of these characters. And so we start up in the first issue with the American superhero of the group. He's a guy named Brian Johnson. He's a Black Navy veteran, and so he's very used to serving his country, serving America, and he's become this superhero now. He's called a PeaceKeeper. And so very traditional superhero costume, red, white, and blue. And he's going out there and he's fighting for America around the world. And when you read it, there's a little bit of a twist as to that. He's out there and you see him a lot operating in these other countries, kind of doing stuff on behalf of America. But what's going on at home while he's doing all that is kind of the premise for the book and for that first issue. And so that's the basic setup. And so we're both building this character and we're introducing people to this world, and you get little hints along the way of what everyone else is doing and kind of the different ways in which these super people have kind of changed, everything in these really, really kind of cool, really good, sometimes really not so good sometimes ways.
I really liked how you had a way of tying in like real world events too, like what actually was kind of happening in America, but with like a superhero twist. What was some of your reasoning for that? What do you want the reader to feel when they read this book, initially?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those books that I really want the readers to be able to pick up and read multiple times and get something else out of it each time. I want to give my money's worth to whoever who's reading this, and I want to get something that, if I was reading it, I would want to read again and again. So on the one hand, you pick it up and it's a traditional superhero tale. You have this kind of traditional superhero. There's a crisis that comes that, challenges him in some ways that really kind of tests him and limits his powers, and, coming in, can he save the day? So you have that story. But you also have this backdrop. We touch on a lot of things in the book. In just the first issue, we touch on things like kind of the Black Lives Matter movement. And you can imagine if America's superhero was a Black man. Served in the military, who was fighting on behalf of America, who was the public face of America around the world. Like, what would that look like in America itself, and in the kind of America that we have, where you still would have, racial inequality, you still have police brutality, you still have the need for things like the Black Lives Matter movement. Could one person, even a person who has superpowers, really change that? Or would they just kind of get stuck in the same political base that we see now? And that's really kind of what I wanted to set up here, and just to really tease that out. There's a lot of stuff, again, like I said, you turn on the news every day and you see all this kind of stuff and you kind of wonder, how can we fix it? It looks like our politicians don't really have a good idea of how to fix it. Could this fictional character, if Superman flew into this situation, so to speak, could he fix this? Or is it something that brute force could really solve? And so that was really going into it a lot, and all kinds of stuff built into, I was a fan of Barack Obama, to wear my politics on my sleeve a little bit. And, there's a little bit of a metaphor there, right? Like, he was the face of America. He was the American Superman, if you will, for a long time. And you saw the way in which he was regarded in the rest of the world versus the way in which he was necessarily treated in America by some people. And not to get, too partisan in it, but kind of using that experience and watching that and kind of like, okay, even someone who's our superhero would still have to deal with some of this kind of stuff. And how will they be able to navigate it? Again, while flying around and punching bad guys.
No, I honestly 100% think you nailed it on the head too. Because there would be, a group of people out there who would absolutely hate him, and protest them. And The more you talk about it, it's like, yeah, this would make 110% sense for this to kind of happen. And man, it's just it's wild to really try to sit here and think of like how America would react to a black superhero like this, of this nature, like in this day and age. And I think you really killed it. What was some of your influences like that you drew when writing this? You know, some of like what went into the process when creating it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a whole bunch of things. Like, you know, I study all this kind of stuff, you know, race and history in America and all these kind of things. And so some of it I drew, you know, really far back, talking about, you know, people like one of my, you know, heroes in real life is W.B. Du Bois, who, for people who don't know him, he was a black man. He was an academic. He was one of the kind of founders of sociology. He was the very first black man to receive a PhD from Harvard University. And so when I went there, you know, his plaque is on the wall and everything. He was also one of the founders of the NAACP. And so he was an academic, but he was an activist. And he had this theory about kind of what was called the talented 10th, where, you know, he would essentially say that, you know, within the black population, you know, you choose the, you know, the 10% of people who are the most talented, and you educate them and you put them in these positions of leadership, and you let them kind of lead the way, and everyone else is kind of better off, you know, as a result of this, you know, this vanguard kind of, this talented 10th doing that. And so this idea of 10 is a little bit inspired by that. You know, we kind of choose the best of our best, or make the best of our best. And, you know, ideally they kind of lead the way for everyone. And whether or not that actually works is something that we play out. You know, some people use their powers for really good things, some not so good, as you can imagine, and all these kind of things. So everything like that to some more recent things. There's a part of the book, and I can't, you know, spoil it. So
Yeah.
You know, I was doing some research, and there was this really interesting case that I studied from. It was in the 1980s, and so this is a time where you had lots of radicals. You know, this radical group in Philadelphia is called MOVE, M-O-V-E. They're this kind of like black separatists, and they got into this big standoff with the Philly police in their like compound and all these kind of things. And the really crazy thing is that the way this thing ends is that the police department in Philadelphia,
They dropped the bomb?
Exactly.
Yes,
they dropped a bomb on this compound in the middle of a neighborhood, in the middle of Philadelphia. And like, you know, it sounds ridiculous if you hear it. Like the police department of a city dropping a bomb on a house in the middle of a neighborhood, but this actually happened.
Yes.
And things like that, you know, it's like things that you couldn't make up. But, you know, really inspired, like there are scenes in the book that are inspired by things like that. And when people read the book, you know, they'll pick up on those kind of things.
It caused so much damage too. It like destroyed that whole entire neighborhood, didn't it?
It like wiped out a neighborhood.
Because they set everything on fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they literally firebombed.
Dude, they tried to bury that too. Like that's a story that you don't find. You have to dig for that one.
Very much so.
Yeah,
and so,
yeah.
And so stuff like that really goes into that, into the book, and you know, and so I wanted to draw upon like our real history, and tell it in this, you know, kind of fantastical way, but in a way that like spoke to the stuff that had happened. And that wasn't, you know, terribly long ago. You know, that was 85. I was alive then, and you know, even, you know, our readers, or you know, and some of these our readers' parents are alive, and you know, this was not very long ago. So this is very much reflecting on like the recent history of our country, and even like the current events of our country with some of the stuff that's in that book.
No, absolutely. I really can appreciate just the nods that you do too, because on the first read, unless like you're really looking for it, it's not something that you would directly notice, you know. And after like hearing you talk about it, it's like, okay, I can definitely see that, you know. So I appreciate the way you were able to do that. Before we dive into the Kickstarter, though, do you want to give a shout out to the rest of your creative team? You know, people who put the art to the words and the colors to the art and then the letters to everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, that's been one of the funniest things about this. Like, you know, I'm a newbie. This is my first, you know, comic book that I've ever written and everything. And so I was super blessed and fortunate enough to hook up with some really, really talented artists who just knocked it out of the park. And, you know, so much better than I can imagine. And so, you know, the pictures are all done by Marcos Lima, who's, you know, this really super talented young artist out of Brazil. And I met him online. We came back, and he did the pencils, he did the aims, he did the layouts. He really did some really funky stuff, with a lot of the layouts, with a lot of the perspectives, and all these kind of things. It's it just blew my mind. Coming back and seeing, I threw some words down on a page, and he brought this back, and it was okay, wow, that's amazing. So Monaco, who did the colors, who's just such a class act, such a professional, all the things, everything just pops off of the page because of him. It's just so vibrant. It's just so expressive. The color schemes, the superhero costume, all this other kind of stuff, the logo, all these things. And then Buddy Bodwin on letters. Buddy is just such a professional, and such he taught me so much stuff about panel design and all these kind of things. It really made me just appreciate the art of lettering. He's very much a comic creator, all different aspects of it himself, and so for him to jump into this book for us was just really a find. And so we have all those folks. Also have a variant cover, go Kickstarter, by the extremely talented Lane Lloyd, who it was a coup for me to get him to do that. If you've ever seen any piece of his, it just immediately it's his.
No, he did my profile picture. I was like, what a small world.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so you know very well. And the really cool thing about that is he did it, and he hadn't even read the entire script when he did it. He knew the premise, he knew some of the pages. But the image that he did, if you read the story, it fits so well with the story, without him even knowing where the story was going. And I'm just that's just some talent. That's that intuition, just to kind of nail the feel, nail the vibe there. And so really extremely talented art team. Been so lucky to work with all those guys.
No, absolutely. So speaking of Kickstarter, though, let's go ahead and switch over to the campaign and take a look at it and see what we're campaigning for. Being the link in the chat for everyone that is watching, feel free to check this out with us. If you're unable to back, simply just sharing it on Twitter or even Facebook. Word of mouth is 100% free, and you might have a friend who will absolutely love this story. So we are looking at 10 issue number 1, a one-shot adventure and start of a new superhero epic. Currently at $621 of a $2,000 goal, with 33 backers and 23 days left to go. Do you want us? We can watch this video if you'd like.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let's go for it.
So just let you know, you won't be able to hear the audio, but we'll be able to hear it loud and clear on our end. And if you try to talk, we won't be able to hear you.
Visitors from another world arrived one day. They presented us with an offer. We choose 10 people. And they would give those 10 people amazing powers. Now, 5 years later, we see that the 10 have become heroes, villains, world leaders, cult figures, living weapons, and so much more than we could ever have imagined. From crime to politics to science to religion, everything has changed. 10 number 1 is the start of an amazing superhero epic, but it's also a fulfilling, exciting, self-contained story. 10 number 1 tells the story of Brian Johnson, a Black American Navy veteran who now serves his country as the superhero PeaceKeeper. As PeaceKeeper, Brian Johnson fights for American interests abroad, but is forbidden from doing so in his own country.
I thought that was a really interesting
even
point too.
as hate and injustice grow at home. But when our nation's capital comes under attack, everyone breaks the rules. Will PeaceKeeper be able to save the day, or will he fall into a trap that even he can't escape? Back 10 number 1 on Kickstarter to find out what happens to PeaceKeeper and to start to explore the fantastic world of 10.
Ooh, what a cliffhanger. What a cliffhanger. Okay. No, I really like I really like the you know, how not all of them were good. You know, there's the hint that some of them may have not ended up on the same righteous path. So I really like that little cliffhanger too. And I you know, I've been stuck on the whole philosophy of 10. You know, like how did they come up with that number? Like 10, like the 10% number.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just one of those things that, you know, it kind of came to me like, you know, I was almost divine inspiration kind of thing, you know, he's sitting one there and it's like, what if, you know, there are these people, you know, you could do something like X-Men, and you know, there's like, you know, infinite number of people with, you know, who could have powers and whatnot. But I wanted something a little bit more grounded, much more limited. And 10 just seemed like a good fit. And you know, and there's so many different ways that you can work that number in to so many different things. Like I said, you know, 10% or 10, you know, and that kind of becomes this kind of working motif across this issue and you know, across the future issues that are planned here. And so yeah, you know, it seems manageable. It's like 10 people, you know, to change the world. You know, that seems like something. If you gave 10 people superpowers, that seemed like enough. And like I said, you know, really, you know, really excited to delve more deeply into each of these characters. It's one of those things where everyone starts off with really good intentions, but what they do with those, you know, go in vastly different directions.
Yeah. No, I love that. So what is 10? Think Avengers, X-Men, and Justice League meets Invincible, The Boys, and Injustice. Think Falcon and the Winter Soldier with a dash of X-Files, and Watchmen and Black Panther. So 10 issue 1 is a book you can enjoy again and again. Read and enjoy as a thrilling superhero adventure with fantastic art, and reread it and look at what it says about our world today. And then reread it again and think about what you would do with that incredible power. I love that. I love that. So that is so awesome. This is a self-contained story of Brian Johnson, a black Navy veteran who's now the superhero Peacekeeper fighting for the American interest abroad, but banned from operating at home. When a crisis calls him to Washington, D.C., will Peacekeeper be able to not only fight the bad guys, but also tackle growing hate and oppression at home? Here's a preview of some of the interior pages. So I really, really love the look and design of this. Were you kind of going for that older X-Men vibe, like that feel, you know, from the older books?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, like I said, you know, X-Men was my very, very first comic, and so I think, you know, everything in my kind of comic creator DNA comes from that. And so I was definitely going for a vibe in the book, in kind of the concept. You know, one thing about X-Men, they always juggle, you know, these big cast of characters and all these kind of things. And even, you know, kind of all the way down to the logo itself for 10, it's kind of a cross between the old X-Men logo of the 90s, kind of mixed with the Star Wars crawl, where it's kind of received from the viewer kind of back into the distance. And so, you know, everything like big and small kind of has a little bit of the X-Men DNA.
I love this nod to the crop circles and the pyramids and such, you know, how aliens left behind little markers. And
yeah, I remember as a kid, as a teenager, like, you know, crop circles for a minute was just like everywhere, you know, this huge mystery. And so I wanted to throw in those little nuggets there. It's like, oh yeah, you know, maybe these, you know, little green or little gray men actually have been around for a while and kind of just messing with us, for lack of a better term.
Well, it's crazy. Like, I mean, we could probably sit here and talk hours about it, but like the way the pyramids fall, the way they line up across the world, how could people without like GPS, you know, thousands of years ago be able to do that? Like, it's remarkable. But you know, the construction process, like they had their own system too back then. So who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's just fun to play around. It's kind of also history. You know, something else going on. And then you see here, you know, kind of like the, you know, you get little glimpses of the flashbacks of, you know, how the 10 people were chosen. And, you know, that little like 9-panel grid right there where you kind of, you know, get glimpses of who are the other 9 in addition to this one that we're introducing. And so you get just little teasers, right? Like, you know, you get a shot of somebody's eyes or the flaming sword I really love. You know, what is that about? And, you know, and I, you know, guarantee the backstories of each of those are even more interesting than those little pictures that you see there. And, you know, and I think, you know, this character that you reintroduce here, Brian Johnson, he's a good kind of point of view character. He's a good intro character. You know, he's yeah, of this 10, he's probably the most traditional superhero. He really is kind of the Superman of this universe. What is it like, if Superman actually was, essentially kind of an agent of the American government? I know, like, Frank Miller played around a little bit with that in The Dark Knight Returns and that kind of stuff. But what if that was literal, and put on top of that, that he's not only American, but, he's a Black American in the military, the long history that goes along with that. And so, would that cause some conflict? What would he think about that? What would he be doing? What would he not be doing? How would it work with, America intervening, in this kind of, unnamed country here and kind of in the middle of some kind of conflict and all these kind of things.
Yeah, I love this little explosion scene too. He's unscathed, sitting there. That kind of like the Batman versus Superman when he gets blown up in the Congress building, and he's just sitting there in the smoldering rubbles. Kind of, I love how he's like just like unscathed. It's just like the smoke is like coming off of him. I love that. That was awesome.
Yeah, and I really love that panel. Again, shout out to everybody, to Marcos and Sal and to Buddy for really like, selling that progression and really putting that there in a really striking way. Oh, by the way, before I get out, also shout out to my friend Estrella Sadie, who did the music that was in that trailer. She's a friend of mine. Shout out to her on Twitter and whatnot. Very talented, as you can see. So it's just been really cool to work with all these really amazing and talented people.
Oh, absolutely. So here is the creative team. We have the man of the hour, Christopher himself, right here.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a little bit of a shout out to yourself? What it says right here?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's my professional headshot and all this other kind of stuff. So in my day job, I'm a lecturer. I teach full time at Boston University. Also teach a couple classes at Harvard, which I'm doing right now. I write for a website called Blavity News. Blavity is Black Gravity, so it's a website aimed essentially at Black millennials. And I also have a column every couple weeks in Al Jazeera, and I apparently don't sleep because I do all that.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. And then we have your penciler and your inker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Marcos, like I said, he's really great. Going for big things, I'm gonna hold on to him for as long as I can because just talented guy. So you have Marcos, you have Sal. I should say Sal's the cool one among us. As you can kind of see here, like such a nice guy. Always been willing to work with me. Really, giving me so many tips about comic production, the industry and marketing, and all this other kind of stuff. And then Buddy, who I would say is really kind of the consummate professional here, and probably couldn't do all of this on his own book, and I very well imagine he would be doing so. But I was really lucky enough to get him right at the right moment to deliver this book. So
that is awesome. And then here are some of the reward tiers that you can get. So the digital packages, we have the $5 digital for the digital copy, the $10 digital deluxe, which is going to be a copy of 10-1 with the copy of the script, and then $15 digital deluxe plus, which will get you all of the previous tiers plus a copy of the sketchbook as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, my advanced little secret is that, my very first time I tried to do this, I actually tried to draw the issue myself. So there's a version that hopefully no one else will ever see of, drawn and colored and all this other kind of stuff by me. And then very quickly realized, okay, maybe a couple of things in life, but professional artist is not one of them.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of sketches that, I don't mind sharing with the world. And then obviously, some of Marcos's pencils and whatnot to kind of get the process of how some of these characters and some of these panels really evolved. And then, my script, so you can kind of see what was in my mind and how it translated to the page.
So we have the physical packages. So $15 for the standard, which will get you the physical copy and the digital. The standard plus, which will get you the physical copy, the digital, and then an 8.5 by 11 PeaceKeeper print and a logo sticker as well. And then we have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, definitely wanted to, have a little bit of merch for people who want to buy, a little bit more. We have some cool characters, we have some cool art and design, and I wanted to make it available. And all these packages come with the digital copy. That's kind of the basing and everything. I wanted to make sure that everyone, if you're on your computer, has access to that. I read most comics on computer nowadays, and so having the digital copy available was, super important to me as well.
No, absolutely. And then the Double Up Plus for $5 extra gets you an extra copy of 10 issue number 1. So you can share it with a friend or a family member out there to get them in on the hype as well. We have the variant packages. Oh, sorry. Were you saying something?
I think good for Christmas.
Oh, yeah. So the variant packages, $20 variant cover. Then you get both covers for $30, and then $35 both covers plus. So you'll get 2 physical copies of the cover A, and then a extra copy of the variant as well. So Christmas and give it to a friend. 2 birds, 1 stone. And then we have the thank you packages. So $20 gets you a signed copy, $30 gets you a signed copy and on the thank you, and then $100 gets you a signed copy and a full page ad. So where is this ad going to be placed in the book?
Yeah, so the full page ad, will be probably on the back cover, so right at the end of that last page.
Ooh.
Which I think is a very good last page. And so, you end the story, wanting more, and then you see, here's an ad for, your comic shop or your own book that's coming out, or, whatever the case may be.
And then we have the collector packages. You want to tell us a little bit about the $40 and the mega package collector as well?
Yeah, so the mega package is, kind of a little bit of everything. It's kind of a grab bag. Sorry, I'm scrolling down to actually remember what I put in the collector's package. And so you get, one of each of the copies. You get both covers. You get the physical merchandise. You get the print. You get the stickers. You also get all the digital stuff. So you get the digital copy itself. You get the script. You get the sketchbook. You get basically kind of everything that's gone into this. And then, if you step up a little bit, you get you get the signed copy, you get all these different kind of things for that extra one. You get the thank you page.
Okay. And then we have oh no, you're fine. We have the retailer package as well. So for the $40 retail package, you'll get 10 physical copies, including 8 A covers and then 2 variants. And then the shop name on the thank you page. And then $100 retailer will get you 10 copies, including 7 A covers, and then one of those signed by Chris, and then 1 variant signed as well. And then a full page ad for your shop as well, too. So that's cool. That's awesome. Is that going to be a different ad in the book, or is that still going to be kind of towards the back?
Yeah, so absolutely. So depends a little bit on, how many of these there are. So, if it's one, then it'll probably be towards the back. If there's a couple of them, we might intersperse it in the book.
I got you. Yeah.
Advertisements and whatnot. Yeah, and I really wanted something to, show love to the local comic shops.
I don't think I've ever seen something like that. I've seen the retailer packages, but I don't think I've ever seen one that was bundled with a advertisement for the book. So that's cool. That's awesome. Yes, yeah, that was cool. And then here is just a little bit of how getting issue number 10 to you and who they're going through. So is this pretty much the Kickstarter in its entirety?
Yeah, pretty much. This is the basics. And so, yeah, we're printing here through Comics Wellspring. We're great. Got so highly recommended for everyone, and they're really involved. So everything should be in time. Super high quality. The content of the book is already completely finished, as you know. So it's just waiting for the Kickstarter to end, getting it printed, getting it to people in a timely manner. And so this is the basic of the campaign. And then, I do have a couple stretch goals in mind that I'll, be announcing as we get kind of closer to our main funding goal. I can give, just a little preview. There's a lot of other really great indie comic creators that are working now, and some of them have been kind enough to kind of partner with me. And so, kind of an indie comic bundle will be coming next. And so for people who back the book, you'll get a bunch of, issues, usually number 1 issues of some really great books that folks have been putting out. Some superhero stuff, some horror stuff, a variety of different genres. And so I'm looking forward to putting that up there on the Kickstarter page soon to get people excited. It's like,
that's awesome.
You get this one book and you get like all these free books that, you know, I would pay, you know, top dollar for any one of these. And so the fact that, you know, all of them will be available to our backers, I think I'm really excited about. And I think people who back the book will be too.
Yeah, I really love that too. I've seen that in the indie community where people are kind of banding together to help each other out, like, you know, throwing their issue ones in for bundles and stuff. I think that is such an awesome like move to see the community come together like that.
Yeah, the indie community has just been so great. You know, one of my favorite parts about this process, you know, I love writing the book itself, but also just loved getting to know all these folks in the indie community. You know, really amazing and creative and, you know, super interesting folks doing really good work across all kind of genres. You know, it's superhero stuff, but it's everything. You know, every genre imagined. You know, you have some really people doing super innovative work in all of it. So I think there's a little bit of something in there for everyone, and, you know, just be able to give people that sampling. I'm hoping, you know, they'll go out and buy these other books and catch up on these other series, you know, off of mine. And so it's a win for everybody.
Well, that is so awesome. So, Chris, after going through that Kickstarter, for anyone that is on the fence about backing, what would you like to say to them directly to help them push them over that fence? You know, we just shared the link in the chat once again. So, for anyone that's kind of just teetering on that edge, what would you say to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say, you know, one, I've also read this book. This is a book that I wanted to read growing up. This is a book that, you know, if I wasn't making it, I would be the first person in line to back it. It's really important to me to give a high quality book. So it's a full story, you know, it's building on this larger world and setting it up, but you get a complete story from this book. And as we talked about, a story that you can pick up and read several times, and you'll get something new out of it the second time, the third time you read it. And so it's definitely worth your money. You know, if you want to buy the digital, it's as little as $5. You know, I went to Starbucks the other day, and, like, you know, just my drink was more than that. So,
yeah,
you know, for something that, you know, make you happy for 10 minutes, you'll have something that you can hold, you know, and read again and again, you know, for less, you know, a half or a third of a movie ticket or one of these kind of things. You know, fantastic art. I think, you know, clever writing, all these kind of things. And so, you know, whether or not you just want a one and done story, or whether or not you're looking for the next big kind of superhero world, which is really what this is intended to be in, really getting you on the ground floor. So imagine the first time that you discovered X-Men or Avengers or Fantastic Four or whatever. Like, you get that feeling from this book. And so I think for that alone, you know, if I was a customer, I would pop it and do it. So check it out. I'm very confident that people would like the book and will want to come back for more.
No, absolutely. And having read it, you know, I definitely can attest to everything you said. I loved it. I thought it was a blast. I can't wait to see what else comes from this universe, because we have 9 other characters to explore. But that is another talk for another podcast. Before we end things completely, Chris, I always love asking a question in particular, because as much as this is a show where we really focus on you and your book, it's also a nice platform for anyone who might be new or maybe just struggling in particular. And they're looking for a little bit of advice. So with that being said, for anyone that's out there that might just be stuck getting going with the process, whether it's art or writing, what type of suggestion would you give them to help them get motivated to go?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think my first bit of advice is pretty simple, but, you know, do it. You know, you have a story to tell. You know, if you think you have a story to tell, then you do. And so, you know, just get out there and do it. You know, if you're a writer, start writing. If you're an artist, you know, draw the things that, you know, you're passionate about, the things that you want to see, and, you know, put your heart out there, and, you know, to be evaluated, to hook up with some other folks, you know, doing this. And the second thing I would say is that there's a really amazing community out there of writers, of artists of all sorts. And just connecting with that community as a creator and as a fan. And, you know, if you start as one, you're very much going to turn into the other, I believe. Helps you to grow as a person. It helps you grow as an artist, a storyteller. And so, you know, dive into that community, and they're super friendly. You know, so many people who are, you know, just eager to help other people get into comics and get into this thing that we all love to do, to create and to read ourselves. And so just go for it. You know, it may blow up to be a big thing. It may be something that you do on the side and you have fun with, but either way, you know, dive into it. Just don't hold back.
I love that. Don't hold back. Go full force. And and keep going till the brakes fall off. I love it. Thank you so much for swinging by, Chris, breaking down 10 and everything in between. Guys, this has been such an awesome night. We have just a few days before New Comic Book Day, so treat yourself and make sure you back, excuse me, tongue-tied. So treat yourself and back 10, issue 1 today. With that being said, it is time for us to wrap up. I hope you all have a lovely Monday night, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.